I should have known something was wrong when my mother-in-law started using her spare key like a VIP pass to my life. "Hana," she announced that Tuesday morning, walking into my kitchen without knocking. "A woman your age should be preparing for motherhood, not QuickBooks reports." Yuki Tanaka was the kind of woman who wore judgment like perfume, thick, unmistakable, and impossible to ignore. Former beauty queen turned corporate matriarch, she believed in appearances, bloodlines, and keeping women in their place. Unfortunately, she lived 2 streets over, which meant surprise visits were her specialty. I was 36, a full-time accountant for a regional logistics firm, childless, tired, and slowly being erased from my own marriage. Yuki poured herself coffee like I'd offered. She eyed the spreadsheets on my laptop, then sighed dramatically. "I'm worried. Without a baby, who's going to inherit the company? Kenji's the only heir. No child means the Tanaka family line ends here." I bit back a dozen responses. The company was a mid-sized transport chain founded by her husband, Hiroshi. Yuki talked about it like it was the Roman Empire. "I have a meeting in 20 minutes. Feel free to lock up behind you." She didn't move. "You've been married 8 years. Are you even trying anymore?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because the truth was, we had tried. We'd cried together, failed together, but eventually we stopped even hoping. And now it was just me, managing the house, the bills, my job, and the echo of what used to be a marriage. Kenji, my husband, had always been softer than his parents. At 38, he still deferred to Yuki like a teenager caught smoking. I used to think that made him kind. Now I wondered if it just made him weak. He started coming home late again. First once a week, then twice, then 4 nights in a row. "Client dinner," he'd mutter, shrugging off his coat. At first I tried to believe him. Then came the nights when he wouldn't eat what I made. "You already ate?" I asked once, trying to keep my voice calm. He didn't even look up. "Had a burger with the guys." "You don't even like burgers." Silence. That night, I asked if we could go away for a weekend. Just the 2 of us. Try to reconnect. He sighed like I'd asked him to build a rocket. "Maybe if you gave my mom less attitude and gave me more attention, we wouldn't have this problem." My heart stung like I'd walked into a glass door. "What problem?" I whispered. He didn't answer. He just walked upstairs and closed the bedroom. Door behind him. A few days later, I found an envelope on the kitchen counter, already opened. I wasn't snooping, it was just there. The sender was Coastal Credit and Finance, and the summary inside made my hands go cold. Outstanding balance, $14,762.54. There were itemized charges: Cartier bracelet, Spa World Platinum membership, Louis Vuitton. My name wasn't on anything, but our home address was. That same night, I dug through the kitchen trash. I found shredded receipts, taped them together like a crime scene puzzle, all dated from the last 6 weeks. One showed a charge for a $900 silk robe, another for a couple's massage. None of these were mine. That's when I noticed the perfume. It wasn't mine. I hadn't worn perfume in months, but the faint, lingering scent of jasmine on Kenji's dress shirts clung like guilt. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I started watching. Checking mileage, taking photos of receipts, saving bank statements. I told myself I was collecting evidence. But the truth was, I was bracing for the moment I'd have no choice but to face what I already knew. That moment came at 2:34 a.m., 3 weeks later. The ringtone pierced the darkness. It was Kenji's phone vibrating on his nightstand. He wasn't home. Said he was helping with a warehouse audit in Cleveland. The number was unfamiliar. I hesitated, then picked up. A woman's voice answered, high-pitched and breathless. "Are you Kenji's wife?" I sat upright. "Yes. Who is this?" He collapsed. "At the hotel. Oh God. He's at the plaza, the downtown one. They're taking him to St. Luke's Hospital. It's his heart. Please, he's critical." The line went dead. I threw on jeans over my pajamas, grabbed my keys, and drove through the night on autopilot, heart hammering so loud I thought I might pass out. Behind the wheel, the hospital smelled like bleach and cold metal. The nurse at the front desk didn't even flinch when I rushed in. "Are you family?" "Wife," I managed, barely getting the word out. She nodded like she'd seen it all before. "Cardiac wing, room 412. They just stabilized him. You'll want to prepare yourself." Prepare myself for what? I couldn't feel my legs. My mouth was dry. The hallway stretched ahead like a tunnel, sterile and endless. Each fluorescent light overhead buzzing louder than the last. As I reached the turn toward his room, I slowed and stopped. A woman was already standing outside room 412. She looked like she'd stepped out of a glossy magazine, tall, slender, barely out of college with smooth blonde hair that probably cost more than my mortgage payment. Her black dress was designer. Her heels were the kind you don't wear unless you expect to be seen, and yet she was trembling, clutching. A Louis Vuitton handbag like a life preserver. Mascara streaked her cheeks. She looked wrecked. When her eyes met mine, she stiffened. You must be Hana," she said. Her voice cracked on my name. Her hands shook. I stopped a few feet away, heart pounding. "Who are you?" She swallowed hard. "I'm Mika. Kenji and we were supposed to get married." The words hit me like a slap. I blinked. "What did you just say?" She stepped back, flustered. I didn't think you'd get here this fast. He texted me earlier, said his chest hurt, but he didn't want me to panic. I thought it was nothing." I stared at her, my mind trying to catch up. Young, beautiful, crying, dressed like a grieving widow. Wearing his bracelet, the one I gave Kenji for our 5th anniversary. And she was here first, in front of his door, like she belonged there. I didn't speak to her again until hours later. Mika had disappeared into the ICU waiting room while I sat by Kenji's side, numb and silent. The machines beeped steadily. The oxygen line hissed. His face was pale. His chest rose and fell like it was on borrowed time. The doctor told me it was a massive heart attack. They'd stabilized him for now, but the damage was extensive. At some point, I became aware of Yuki's perfume before I saw her. That familiar floral cloud, thick and cloying, announced her presence. "Where is he?" she demanded as she stormed down. The hallway. Hiroshi, my father-in-law, following behind, grim-faced. I stood and pointed silently toward the room. She rushed in and gasped at the sight of her son. Then she turned sharply toward me. "What happened?" "I wasn't there," I said quietly. Before she could fire off another accusation, the elevator doors opened again, and Mika stepped out. Yuki turned. Her eyes scanned the girl from head to toe, and instead of shock or confusion, I saw something far worse. Recognition. "Oh my God," Yuki whispered. "You must be Mika." Mika nodded, lips trembling, eyes wet. "I'm pregnant," she said softly, "with Kenji's child." Hiroshi inhaled sharply. Yuki's reaction was not what I expected. She didn't slap her, didn't yell, didn't even look at me. Instead, she rushed forward and threw her arms around Mika like a long-lost daughter. "Oh, thank God," she cried. "I was so afraid our bloodline would end with him. You have no idea how long I've prayed for this." I stood there frozen as Mika collapsed into her arms like they were old friends. I wanted to scream. I wanted to vomit. But mostly I wanted answers. Kenji died 2 days later. Just like that. He never woke up, never opened his eyes, never spoke another word to me. The doctor said his heart gave out during the night. Yuki sobbed. Mika wailed, and I just stood there, empty. The man I married for 8 years had been living a double life. And now I had to plan his funeral with his mistress in tow. "Include her," Yuki said flatly as we met in the family room of the funeral home. "She's carrying his child. She's family." "She is not family," I replied. "She is now," Yuki said. "Front row." Hiroshi sat silently in the corner, rubbing his temples. "You want her to sit where? With us?" "Yes." "And you expect me to host the service? Deliver the eulogy? Stand beside a woman I didn't know existed last week?" "She's carrying our future," Yuki snapped. "Don't be petty." I nearly laughed. Petty? I was being asked to swallow betrayal, humiliation, and grief, and smile through it for the sake of appearance. But in the end, I agreed. Not because of them, but because of Hiroshi. "She should do it," he said quietly. "Kenji may have made mistakes, but this service should be done right. Hana deserves that." And so I agreed. I regretted it the second the doors opened on the day of the funeral. The chapel was packed. Kenji's casket stood at the front, draped in flowers. I stood next to it, numb in black. Then she arrived, Mika, wearing a fitted black dress, pearls, soft waves in her hair, and that same Louis Vuitton bag on her arm. She looked like a senator's widow, and when people turned to look at her, she smiled. Yuki ushered her up front like royalty. "This is Mika," she said proudly to anyone within earshot. "She's family now. She's carrying my grandchild." I could feel the whispers starting behind me. I could feel my parents' discomfort. My sister looked at me in pity. No one had told them who this woman was, but they understood enough. I kept my head high. I read the eulogy. I held the line. Until Mika opened her mouth. It was during the post-service reception in the adjoining hall. I was standing near the coffee table, answering awkward condolences from distant cousins, when I heard Mika raise her voice. "She deserved it," she said. "I mean, 8 years and nothing. No kids, no legacy, no spark. She was just a placeholder." The room quieted. I turned. She was talking to 2 women I didn't recognize, laughing, tossing her hair. "She couldn't even keep his attention," Mika added. "Maybe if she wasn't a barren little failure, none of this would have happened." I felt the blood drain from my face, but that wasn't the worst part. Yuki appeared beside her and laid a hand on her shoulder. "You had 8 years, Hana," she said to me, loud enough for everyone to hear. "And nothing. Maybe Kenji just needed a real woman." People gasped. Someone dropped a glass. The room buzzed like a hornet's nest. I opened my mouth to speak, but I couldn't find air. My knees trembled. And then, I think it's time someone told the truth about Mika Yamamoto. All heads turned. Standing in the doorway was my brother Rio. Former police officer, veteran, the only man in my life who had never once failed to protect me. His jaw was tight, his eyes locked on Mika, and he wasn't smiling. Rio stepped forward, calm and deliberate. The room went deathly quiet. Mika's eyes widened, her fake grief twisting into something closer to panic. "I knew you looked familiar," he said, stopping just a few feet from her. "But it wasn't until I made a call this morning that it clicked." Mika stiffened. "My friend Daiichi sends his regards," Rio added, her face drained of color. I blinked. "Daiichi?" Rio glanced at me, then returned his eyes to her. "Her husband, Hana. His real name is Daiichi Nakamura. Former army, moved to Denver 3 years ago, married Mika Yamamoto shortly after." People around us started murmuring. Hiroshi stood. Yuki's hand dropped from Mika's arm. "Don't listen to him," Mika said quickly. I left him. We're separated." "It's complicated." "No, it's not," Ryo interrupted coldly. "You disappeared with his money, cleared out his savings, filed no divorce papers, and started playing fiancé to a man who already had a wife." I felt something inside me start to lift. Rio turned to the stunned crowd. "This woman isn't Kenji's widow. She's still legally married. Everything she's claiming is a lie." Then, as if on cue, the back doors opened. and in walked a tall man in jeans and a brown leather jacket. "Daiichi," I breathed. "Mika!" the man barked. She actually flinched. He strode down the aisle like he was walking into a courtroom. "What the hell are you wearing? Whose funeral is this?" She started backing away. "Daiichi, I told you." He held up his phone and played a voice recording. It was grainy, but her voice was unmistakable. I faked the pregnancy. I just wanted a slice of his money. His family's loaded. Once he's gone, I'll say the baby's his. By the time they figure it out, too late. A woman in the back gasped. Yuki staggered into her chair. "You lied about being pregnant?" I asked, my voice shaking. Mika's mouth opened and closed. "You tried to bury me at my husband's funeral," I whispered, "with a story you built out of garbage." Daiichi stepped forward, pulled out a folded document, and slapped it on the table beside the condolence book. "Divorce papers, already signed by me. All we need now is your signature and a few witnesses. Anyone here care to oblige?" People practically tripped over each other to get closer. Mika's hands trembled as she scribbled her name, her glamour unraveling by the second. The moment the pen left the page, she bolted toward the door. But Rio stepped in her way. "You stole from a veteran," he said flatly, "and committed fraud across state lines. You think we're letting you walk out of here?" He reached into his jacket and pulled out his badge. Expired, but still real. "I made a few more calls this morning, too. You'll be getting visitors." Mika looked around. No one came to her defense, not even Yuki. She turned, wide-eyed, and fled down the hall, heels clicking like a gavel. The aftermath was quiet. Embarrassed silence hung in the air like smoke. Yuki sat like a statue. I thought she'd blame me, scream, lash out. Instead, she whispered, "I was wrong about everything." It didn't bring me satisfaction. Not yet. But it was a start. Hiroshi came to me later and placed a warm, heavy hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry, Hana," he said quietly. "You didn't deserve this." "No," I said. "But I survived it, and that somehow meant more than winning." A few weeks passed. The chaos died down. I went back to work. I stopped checking the mailbox with dread. I slept through the night for the first time in months. Then one morning, I couldn't keep down my coffee. I brushed it off. Stress, I told myself, until it happened again and again. Just to be safe, I stopped at the pharmacy. Took the test in the office bathroom. 2 lines, 2. I sat there on the closed toilet, gripping the edge of the sink like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. I drove straight to my doctor. Blood test, confirmation, numbers. She smiled at me, kindly. "Congratulations, Hana. You're pregnant." I walked out into the sunlight with a hand on my stomach and a strange sense of weightlessness. After all that pain, after the betrayal, the humiliation, the death, the lies, after Mika's act, after Yuki's cruelty, after Kenji's silence. There it was, a heartbeat, not Kenji's, mine, and something else, something small and growing and finally mine. I sat in the car, stared out the windshield, and whispered to no one. He never gave me peace or love or safety. But maybe this child is the only true gift Kenji ever left behind. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled.